What if the most powerful thing you could say during a bitter family argument is nothing at all? Think about that for a moment. In a world that screams for you to have a comeback, to win the point, to defend your honor, what if true strength, true victory, lies in a deliberate, strategic silence? I see it all the time in the men I mentor. A father and son, locked in a years-long battle of wills, their conversations nothing more than a series of landmines. Two brothers, whose shared history has become a shared battlefield, every word a weapon aimed at an old wound. They come to me exhausted, believing their relationships are broken beyond repair because they can no longer talk to each other. They've tried every argument, every plea, every angry outburst, and they're right. Words have failed. But they're looking at the problem from the wrong angle. They believe the solution lies in finding the right words, the perfect combination of syllables that will unlock understanding and end the conflict. This is a mirage in the desert of emotional turmoil. The solution isn't adding more words to the fire, it's removing the fuel. This isn't about the petulant, passive-aggressive, silent treatment we all remember from childhood. That's a tool of manipulation, a weapon of the weak. What I am talking about is something else entirely. It is a calculated pause, a moment of internal command where you choose logic over impulse, peace over chaos. It's a practice I had to learn the hard way, after a lifetime of believing that the loudest voice in the room was the one in control. In my early days as an entrepreneur, I thought debate was a blood sport. I would verbally dismantle opponents in the boardroom, using logic and rhetoric as a cudgel. I won the arguments, but I lost the loyalty of good people. I brought that same scorched earth tactic home, and the cost was even higher. This isn't about avoiding conflict. It is about engaging with it from a position of unassailable strength. It's about building an iron mind that allows you to have a softer heart. Over our time together today, I'm going to give you a blueprint for combining the strategic silence of the Stoic philosophers with the profound strength that comes from true, rational understanding. This is how you stop being a reactor in your family's drama and start becoming the architect of its peace. Before we go on, I want you to ask yourself a question and be brutally honest with your answer. In your last major argument, were you trying to solve the problem, or were you trying to win? The distinction is everything. Winning is about ego. Solving is about connection. Winning is about proving you are right. Solving is about creating what is right. Most family conflicts spiral out of control because they are not dialogues. They are competing monologues. Each person is so busy reloading their next verbal volley that they fail to hear the substance of what is being said. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus reportedly said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." This isn't a quaint proverb, it is a strategic formula for a successful life. By choosing silence, you are not surrendering. You are seizing control of the one thing you can truly command in any situation: your own response. You are forcing a pattern interrupt. You are giving both yourself and the other person the most precious gift in a moment of chaos: space. Space to breathe. Space for the emotional storm to pass. Space for reason to find purchase. This is the first step toward transforming your relationships from battlegrounds into sanctuaries. Why do we do it? Why do we leap into the fire of a pointless argument, knowing it will only burn us and the people we claim to love? The answer is simple and unflattering. We are slaves to reactivity. An emotional trigger is tripped. A sarcastic tone, an old accusation, a perceived slight, and our logical mind is instantly hijacked. The ancient Stoics understood this well. They saw the human mind as being in a constant struggle between logos, our capacity for reason, and pathos, our passionate, often irrational emotional responses. When you're in the heat of a family conflict, pathos is in the driver's seat. Your heart rate climbs, your vision narrows, and your brain is flooded with the same chemicals that our ancestors needed to fight off a saber-toothed tiger. In that state, You are physiologically incapable of thoughtful, compassionate, or productive conversation. You are in survival mode. The ego takes command, and its prime directive is to protect itself at all costs. Winning the argument feels, in that moment, like a matter of life and death. I remember my own crucible. Years ago, during a particularly stressful period in my tech company, a key project was failing. I was burning the candle at both ends, fueled by caffeine and anxiety. I came home late one evening to find my son, then a teenager, had neglected a promise he'd made. It was a minor infraction, something about a household chore, but in my depleted, reactive state, it felt like a profound betrayal. I didn't see my son. I saw another problem in a long line of problems. The trigger was tripped, and I unleashed a torrent of criticism that was wildly disproportionate to the situation. I saw the look on his face, not of defiance, but of genuine hurt. And in that moment, a flicker of my rational mind broke through the red mist of anger. I had won the exchange. He retreated to his room in silence. But what had I truly accomplished? I had damaged my connection with my son to prove a point about taking out the garbage. I had traded a mountain of relational trust for a molehill of parental authority. It was a hollow, sickening victory. This is the trap of reactivity. It convinces you that the immediate battle is all that matters, blinding you to the long-term war for connection and peace. The first practical step in escaping this trap is to become a student of your own physiology. How does your body signal that a hijack is imminent? For me, it's a tightening in my chest and heat rising in my neck. For a man I mentor, it's his hands clenching into fists. For another, it's the pace of his speech quickening. You must identify your tell. This is your early warning system. The moment you feel that physical sensation, that is your signal to initiate the practice of strategic silence. It is not a sign to double down and fight harder. It is an alarm bell telling you that your rational mind is about to be taken offline. The habit to build here is simple, but not easy. Connect the physical sensation to a single, conscious breath. The trigger happens, the chest tightens, and instead of a word, you produce a slow, deliberate inhale. You are not ignoring the problem, you are giving your logos a chance to come back online. So, let me ask you, what is your body's alarm bell, and for how long have you been ignoring it? Are you willing to finally listen to what it's trying to tell you? It is critical that we draw a bright, clear line between the two forms of silence. One is a tool of the architect used to build and repair. The other is a weapon of the arsonist, used to punish and destroy. I am talking, of course, about the difference between strategic, stoic silence and the corrosive, passive-aggressive, silent treatment. The latter is a refusal to engage, born of resentment. It is a childish attempt to inflict emotional pain by withdrawing connection. It says, "You have hurt me, and now I will make you suffer by pretending you don't exist." It is a declaration of war. It creates a vacuum filled with anxiety, bitterness, and suspicion. It solves nothing. In fact, it poisons the well, making future reconciliation 100 times more difficult. It is the ego in its most toxic form, seeking to manipulate the other person into compliance or apology through emotional starvation. This is not strength, it is a profound weakness disguised as control. I once consulted for a family-owned manufacturing business that was on the verge of collapse. The conflict was between two brothers who had inherited the company from their father. The older brother, the CEO, felt the younger brother, the head of sales, was reckless and undisciplined. The younger brother felt the older was a rigid micromanager who stifled innovation. Their board meetings were legendary for their explosive arguments, but the real damage happened in between. After a fight, the older brother would ice out the younger one for weeks. He wouldn't answer his calls, he'd ignore his emails, he'd walk past him in the hallway as if he were a ghost. He was using silence as a cudgel to force his brother to fall in line. But it had the opposite effect. The younger brother, feeling disrespected and isolated, grew more resentful and more reckless in his business dealings, trying to prove his own worth. The company was bleeding money, employees were taking sides, and the family legacy was turning to ash. All because one man was using silence not to create space for reason, but to create a prison of resentment. So, how do you know the difference in your own practice? The distinction lies entirely in your internal intention. Weaponized silence is externally focused. Its goal is to produce a specific reaction in the other person. Strategic silence is internally focused. Its goal is to restore command over your own mind. Before you enter that sacred pause, you must ask yourself a simple question. Am I doing this to punish them, or am I doing this to master myself? The answer will determine whether you are acting from a place of wisdom or a place of woundedness. A practical habit to cultivate is to define your purpose for the silence before you employ it. As you take that conscious breath when your trigger is pulled, state your intention silently to yourself. I am choosing silence to allow my anger to pass. I am choosing silence because my words now would be unhelpful. I am choosing silence so I can listen. This act of defining your purpose anchors you to a rational goal. It transforms the pause from a passive-aggressive pout into an active, disciplined strategy for emotional management. Are you using silence as a shield to protect your inner peace, or as a sword to wound another? Be honest. Your relationships depend on the answer. Let's move from the why to the how. Knowing that strategic silence is a powerful tool is one thing, wielding it effectively under fire is another entirely. This is not a passive act. It is a rigorous, active discipline. I call it creating a sacred pause. It consists of 3 distinct, deliberate steps that you must practice until they become as automatic as breathing. Step 1 is recognition. As we've discussed, this is the act of becoming a master of your own internal signals. You must learn to spot the first spark of emotional reactivity before it becomes an inferno. It's that tightness in your jaw, that flash of heat, that immediate defensive thought. In that split second between stimulus and response lies your entire power. For most of your life, that space has been infinitesimally small, an unconscious reflex arc. The goal of your training is to expand that space, to turn a split second into a full second, then 2, then 5. It's in that space that you reclaim your freedom. Step 2 is regulation. Once you've recognized the trigger, you must immediately regulate your physiology. The simplest and most profound tool for this is the breath. When you are emotionally hijacked, your breathing becomes shallow and rapid, signaling to your nervous system that you are in danger. You must consciously override this. The moment you recognize the trigger, you execute a single, tactical breath. Breathe in slowly through your nose for a count of 4. Hold for a count of 4, and exhale slowly through your mouth for a count of 6. This is not some New Age mysticism, it is a biological reset button. The elongated exhale stimulates the vagus nerve, which activates your parasympathetic nervous system, your body's natural rest and digest system. It is a direct message to your brain that the saber-toothed tiger is gone. It pulls you out of the reactive emotional brain and allows the logical, rational prefrontal cortex to come back online. 1 breath. That is the price of admission back into a state of mental clarity. Step 3 is reorientation. This is the final and most crucial step within the sacred pause. Having recognized the trigger and regulated your physiology, you now use the silence you've created to reorient your goal. You ask yourself a new set of questions, far different from the ones your ego was screaming moments before. Instead of, "How can I win this?" you ask, "What is the most useful action I can take right now?" Instead of, "How can I prove I'm right?" you ask, "What does this person need to feel heard?" Or, "What is the long-term goal for this relationship?" This is where you pivot from self-defense to problem-solving. A few years back, my adult daughter called me, deeply upset about a financial decision I'd made that she felt was too risky. My immediate internal reaction was defensive. My ego roared, "I have built everything from nothing. Who is she to question my judgment? I felt the heat in my neck. I recognized the trigger. I took one slow, deliberate breath. And in that 6-second exhale, I reoriented. The question changed from how do I shut down this criticism to what is she really saying? I realized she wasn't attacking my competence, she was expressing fear. Fear for my well-being, for our family's security. By creating that pause, I was able to respond not to her words, but to her fear. The conversation transformed from a potential fight into a moment of deep connection. That is the power you are building. Are you willing to practice these 3 steps, even when every fiber of your being is screaming at you to attack? Silence, on its own, is a powerful anesthetic. It can stop the bleeding in a heated argument and numb the immediate pain, but it is not the cure. Silence without a shift in perspective can simply become a cold void. It can de-escalate a conflict, but it cannot heal the rift. The anger, though unspoken, can curdle into resentment. The wound, though no longer being actively poked, can fester beneath the surface. To truly repair a connection, the space created by silence must be filled with something more powerful: rational understanding and magnanimity. The outline you sent me referred to this as Christian forgiveness. And while that framework is valuable for many, I want to approach it from the Stoics' operating system, which is grounded in logic and personal virtue. For the Stoic, what others might call forgiveness is the logical conclusion of a clear-eyed assessment of reality. The great Stoic emperor, Marcus Aurelius, wrote something in his private meditations that I believe is one of the most powerful mindset shifts a person can make. He told himself, when you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they cannot tell good from evil. This is not a cynical complaint. It is a radical act of preparation and empathy. He's not excusing their behavior, he is explaining it to himself in a way that prevents it from disrupting his own inner peace. He is recognizing that most of the harmful things people do and say are not born of malice, but of ignorance. They are acting from a place of fear, insecurity, or a flawed understanding of the world. They are chasing things they believe will bring them happiness, being right, feeling superior, protecting their ego, but which only deepen their own suffering. When you can see the person yelling at you not as an enemy, but as a person who is acting out of their own inner turmoil and confusion, your anger begins to dissolve and is replaced by something closer to pity, or, at the very least, a detached understanding. I had a business partner early in my career who was brilliant but deeply insecure. He would constantly undermine me in meetings, taking credit for my ideas and highlighting my mistakes. For months, I was locked in a state of rage and resentment. I practiced silence. I stopped rising to his provocations, but internally I was seething. The relationship was dead. The breakthrough came not from an apology, but from a shift in my own perception. I started to apply the Aurelian principle. I observed him and saw a man terrified of being seen as second best. A man whose sense of self-worth was so fragile it could only be built by tearing others down. His arrogance was a shield for his terror. He couldn't tell the difference between the good of collaborative success and the evil of his ego's desperate struggle. The moment I truly understood this, my anger vanished. I didn't need to forgive him in the traditional sense. His actions were no longer a personal attack, they were the predictable symptoms of his own inner sickness. This allowed me to deal with him strategically and dispassionately, without the poison of resentment clouding my judgment. It saved the business, and more importantly, it saved my own peace of mind. So ask yourself, the person you are in conflict with, are they truly evil, or are they simply ignorant? Can you look past the hurtful words and see the fear or pain that is driving them? This is the bridge from a cold silence to a warm reconciliation. Let's put this all together and see what this architecture of the soul looks like in a real-world scenario. Let's call it emotional mastery in action. The 2 pillars are now in place. You use strategic silence to control your tongue and your temper, and you use rational understanding to manage your heart and your perspective. One without the other is incomplete. Silence without understanding is just a ceasefire. Understanding without the discipline of silence can become a condescending lecture. Together, they form an unbreakable foundation for navigating human relationships. Imagine this common scene. A husband and wife are discussing finances. It's a tense subject. She says, "I just don't understand where the money is going. It feels like you're being careless." The husband's immediate, reactive thought, his pathos, is one of outrage. Careless? I work 60 hours a week to provide for this family. You think I'm just throwing it away? He feels his chest tighten, his face flush with heat. This is the moment of truth. The untrained man gives in to the hijack. He launches the counterattack. The volume escalates. Accusations fly. Old grievances are unearthed. The original topic of the budget is lost in a sea of emotional shrapnel. Nothing is solved. Both parties walk away wounded. The connection frayed a little more. Now, let's replay that scene with the man who has been training his mind. She says, "It feels like you're being careless." He feels the exact same physiological response. The tight chest, the hot flush, but he has trained himself. Step 1. Recognition. He feels the trigger and thinks, there it is. The hijack is starting. Step 2. Regulation. Instead of a word, his first response is a slow, silent inhale through the nose. He holds it for a moment. As he exhales slowly, he is consciously calming his nervous system. This entire process takes maybe 5 seconds, but it is the most important 5 seconds of the conversation. Step 3. Reorientation. In that silent space he created, he interrogates his own reaction. My ego is hurt. She used the word careless. But what is she really saying? Is she attacking me, or is she expressing her own fear and insecurity about our future? He accesses the Aurelian mindset. She is not saying this to be malicious. She is saying this because she is afraid. Her fear is making her clumsy with her words. She cannot tell the good of a calm, collaborative discussion from the perceived good of expressing her anxiety. With this new perspective, his response is entirely different. After the pause, he looks at her, not with anger, but with a genuine desire to understand. He might say, calmly, "It stings to hear you say, careless. But I want to understand what you're feeling. When you say that, what are you most worried about?" He has just transformed a battlefield into a negotiating table. He has validated her feelings without accepting the premise of the accusation. He has controlled himself, and in doing so, he has taken control of the entire emotional dynamic of the room. This is not avoidance. Avoidance is leaving the room or refusing to discuss the topic. This is a higher form of engagement. It is a refusal to engage on the childish level of ego and emotion, and an invitation to engage on the adult level of reason and shared goals. The actionable challenge for you is this. In your very next moment of conflict, commit to the 10-second pause. Don't worry about solving the whole problem. Just give yourself 10 seconds of strategic silence, and in that silence, ask yourself one question. What fear is driving their words right now? This single shift can change everything. When you begin to practice these principles consistently, something remarkable happens. The benefits extend far beyond simply having fewer arguments. You are not just learning a conflict resolution tactic, you are fundamentally re-engineering your inner world. You are building what the Stoics called an inner citadel, a fortress within your own mind that is impervious to the chaos of the external world. Life will continue to throw its arrows at you. People will be unfair, markets will be volatile, loved ones will say hurtful things, and plans will go awry. These things are outside of your control. The untrained mind is like an open field, vulnerable to every incoming projectile. Every insult, every setback, every frustration lands and does damage. You live in a constant state of anxiety, bracing for the next impact. The inner citadel, however, is a sanctuary of your own making. It is built brick by brick with every conscious breath you take instead of an angry word you utter. It is reinforced every time you choose understanding over resentment. The walls are made of your disciplined responses, and the foundation is your unshakable knowledge of what is and is not within your control. When the arrows of fortune fly, they simply strike the outer walls and fall harmlessly to the ground. You can observe the chaos outside without allowing it to become chaos inside. This is the ultimate form of power and freedom. It is the peace that comes not from having a perfect, conflict-free life, but from knowing that you have the internal fortitude to handle any conflict with grace and wisdom. Think of the long-term consequences in your family. The regret you feel after saying something truly vile in a moment of anger. That poison can linger for years, subtly eroding trust and affection. Each time you choose the sacred pause, you are choosing to prevent that poison from ever being created. You start to accumulate less and less relational debt. Instead of a history of painful verbal scars, you build a history of reliability and emotional stability. You become a calming presence, a safe harbor in the family's emotional storms. Your children, your spouse, your siblings, they learn that they can come to you with difficult truths because you will not explode. You will listen. You will respond with reason. You are not just avoiding fights, you are actively building a legacy of peace. This is the real inheritance you leave behind. Not the money or the assets, but the example of a mind that has been mastered. This is not a journey with a final destination. I am 60 years old and have been practicing these principles for decades, and I am still a student. There are still days when my reactivity surprises me, when my ego demands to be heard. The goal is not perfection, it is progress. The goal is to be a little better today than you were yesterday, to widen that gap between stimulus and response by another millisecond, to choose reason over rage one more time. The peace you will find in this practice is not a fragile, fleeting thing. It is an iron peace, forged in the fires of self-discipline and cooled by the waters of wisdom. It is a peace that you earn, and because you earn it, no one can ever take it away from you. What is the alternative? To continue being a puppet whose strings are pulled by the careless words and actions of others? To leave the state of your own soul in someone else's hands? That is no way for a free person to live. We have journeyed through the architecture of a peaceful mind. We've deconstructed the trap of reactivity, distinguished between the weapon of the ego and the tool of the wise, and laid out the mechanics of the sacred pause. We have built the bridge from a cold silence to a warm, rational understanding, and seen how these pillars, control of the tongue and control of the heart, create an unshakable inner citadel. But knowledge without action is merely a form of intellectual entertainment. The philosopher's wisdom is useless until it is applied in the mud and the mire of everyday life. The reading is over. The training begins now. I am not asking you to become a perfect Stoic sage overnight. I am asking you to undertake one small, manageable campaign. This is your first mission in the war against your own worst impulses. For the next 7 days, I want you to choose one relationship in your life that is a consistent source of conflict or frustration. It could be with a spouse, a child, a parent, or a business colleague. And in that relationship, your sole objective is to practice the first step, recognition. That is all. Your goal is not to win an argument or solve a long-standing problem. Your goal is simply to notice. Notice the moment the trigger is pulled. Notice the tightening in your chest, the heat in your face, the defensive thought that screams for release. When you notice it, I want you to do one thing. Label it, silently, in your own mind. Ah, there is the anger. There is the ego. Reactivity is starting. Simply by naming it, you create a sliver of separation between you, the conscious observer, and the emotional reaction itself. You prove to yourself that you are not the anger, you are the one who is aware of the anger. This is the first, most critical step in reclaiming your internal territory. Do not judge yourself if you still react. Do not be discouraged if you notice the trigger and still say the foolish thing you wish you hadn't. The victory, in this first week, is not in the perfect response. The victory is in the awareness. Every time you successfully recognize and label the impulse, you have struck a blow for your own freedom. This is how an iron mind is built. Not in a single heroic act of will, but in 1,000 small daily acts of self-awareness. It is a quiet, internal revolution. I invite you now to share your commitment in the comments below. Not for me, but for yourself. A public declaration has power. Simply write, "I accept the 7-day challenge." It is your first step in moving from a man ruled by external events to a man who commands his internal state. It is the beginning of the journey from being an emotional reactor to becoming the deliberate creator of your own mental fortitude. The path is simple. The work is hard, but the peace it brings is the only victory that truly matters.